Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network, the home of so many amazing different shows that you can find on Twitter through at Join Nerd Party at thenerdparty.com, from Nerd Nuptial on a Monday all the way to Missing Frames on a Sunday. And talking of missing frames, I'm joined by Shawn today. Hello, Shawn.
Hello, Lee. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, I know it's been a wee while since you've been here on the Filibuster, but I have a feeling you'll be on it in a few weeks' time again. So what brings you here today?
I missed you. That was it. I was just like, how do I get to hang out with Lee again and just hang out with him? I don't really care about the people listening to this. I don't care if they find this enjoyable at all. This is just an excuse to talk with you.
Absolutely. So we're just going to just chat away about kind of what we're doing tonight, who we think will win the Super Bowl, and what our thoughts are on every different sort of politics.
This is the Super Bowl focused episode, which is nothing could be more exciting to anybody.
Exactly. I'm sure the Venn diagram of Nerd Party listeners compared to Super Bowl listeners will probably be quite an interesting.
Yeah. How
one.
many people just turned off the episode? We've lost at least half the listeners.
Exactly. We'll need to put like a definite title where it's like episode 67. It's definitely not about the Super Bowl. Just ignore everything. You
disclaimer.
Hear
Please put an asterisk next to the title.
But one thing nerds do enjoy is talking about movies and rating movies and ranking movies. And one thing that seems to have everyone talking away just now is the list of best Oscar movies for 2018. And we originally spoke about like talking about just one of these movies, but being the film fans we're watching all these best Oscar movies, and we thought, why don't we just go through the list, share our thoughts on some of them. There's one each that we've not seen, and let's just kind of see where it goes, what our favourite ones are, which ones we're surprised made it onto the list, or which ones we're absolutely baffled why it could even be on the list. So I'm quite excited to talk about this with you today.
Yeah,
Shawn.
me too. And you know what's funny? It's funny that you mentioned like movies that were baffled made it onto the list. There are some movies I would argue should have made it on instead of certain entries, but at the same time, I feel like this is one of the strongest rosters we've had for Best Picture in a long time.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly quite a diverse list by the Oscar standards. It's got a bit of everything. It's got some of the token dramas we'd expect, but we've got some, who would have thought last year that Del Toro, Greta Gerwig would have made it onto the list,
Jordan
or Martin
Peele,
McDowell. Yeah, it's a kind of a surprise list. It seems to be, obviously a few years ago it was I think it was called the Whiteout Oscars.
Yeah.
Where it was like, this is the usual stuff, and then they actively tried to diversify the people that were picking the movies, the roster, and now we're going to be able to, we're kind of maybe seeing now the fruition of that diversity in the voting pool.
It's true. You're seeing a lot of there's still a little bit of favoritism as far as, there's still a little bit of the political drama, the social issues and things like that, which has always been the case for the Oscars, so that's not a knock against it. Part of me kind of misses things like there is genre fare like Blade Runner 2049 or War for the Planet of the Apes that I feel should have gotten more recognition than it did. But at the same time, we got a nomination for Get Out and The Shape of Water, which is just like, so I don't really have a place to complain about it because those movies were fantastic and they're really outside the norm for what we're used to seeing in this category.
And then you were talking about some movies you thought, why was that not nominated? What kind of movies was it that you thought, when you got that list, you thought, I was hoping that one was going to be on it or expected to be on?
The one I really, really loved was Blade Runner 2049. I never expected it to get on that roster, but like that was such a powerful artistic statement to release this kind of blockbuster film in the midst of, like, you have superheroes and sequels, and we've all become kind of used to what like an action sci-fi superhero movie should be, or what a sequel to a a popular franchise should be, like with The Force Awakens, where it's like very crowd pleasing, very, very safe, and not that that's a bad thing, but Blade Runner 2049 did an amazing job of kind of expanding the universe while also creating a much more personal and involving character study and story than I thought the original did, as much as I love the original. But to come back and make a sequel to that movie and to have it kind of hold a candle to that felt really impressive to me, and I thought it was such a beautiful film. And again, it's science fiction is still kind of frowned upon in the Academy, and people kind of dismiss it. It also didn't do great at the box office, so I think that kind of hurt its chances. But I was really hoping for that, really pulling for that. Same thing for Planet of the Apes. I thought that was a stunning film. First time I saw it in theaters, I was a little overwhelmed by it. I watched it again and was really able to embrace it. And I think really the fact that the biggest thing going against that is that it has the word Planet of the Apes in the title, and to have an Oscar-nominated film, Best Picture, War for the Planet of the Apes. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I feel like maybe give it a few years, and that trilogy is going to really, I'd put it on par with the Dark Knight trilogy, just as far as quality and consistency. It really is a powerful movie. And then to a lesser extent, I enjoyed this film. I really did love it. I'm not too beaten up about the fact that it didn't get nominated, but Logan I thought was a really impressive, one of the most subversive comic book films since The Dark Knight, and I thought that was really wonderful, and another great movie. I wish it kind of gotten a little bit more attention, but I don't know. What do you think? Are there any things that you thought should have been thrown in that category?
Yeah, like I would have had Logan in my sort of top tier kind of for the best picture of the year, but like the fact that it made it, and even to get like an adapted screenplay is quite incredible.
Yeah.
And I know people have been like, well, maybe Logan should have got a bit more, or it didn't get best picture. Like, I think, maybe it sort of shows the small victories we expect with movies like this, but to get to the level that it did, I was quite impressed.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose I wasn't surprised in the end, just with all the kind of the behind the scenes stuff that kind of started to unfold after, but I thought The Disaster Artist would maybe kind of sneak into the best picture list. And
right.
I know with sort of the way the dates work with American films, like kind of here in the UK, January, February is the sort of period of time we get all the Oscar movies. So things like Lady Bird isn't actually out here yet until mid-February. Phantom Thread only came out a couple of days ago. The Post a few weeks ago. Shape of Water comes out Valentine's Day here.
That's perfect timing.
Yeah, like my local cinema is doing it as a double feature with Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, that's perfect.
My girlfriend has informed me we are not going to see that on Valentine's Day. So after all these months I've waited for this movie, I have to make do with it probably on the 15th.
Oh,
so
man.
It's going to be a hell of a week. It's going to be 50 Shades Darker, then it's Black Panther, then it's Valentine's Day, then it'll be Shape of Water, then I'm going to go see Lady Bird again when it kind of lands back here in the cinema.
Right.
So it's going to be a kind of good week. But obviously a film came out here like the tail end of the year here, which it's ended up being classed as one of the best reviewed movies ever on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm just stunned that has not resulted in a Best Picture nomination for Paddington 2.
I know. What is that? Come on now. That was, and I think part of it is it did not get an American release until January, so it's been out there for a little while, but we just got it. So technically, in America, it qualifies as a 2018 release, and it won't. The sad thing is, of course, it won't see a Best Picture nomination. Of course, it won't be on that list. But again, it's funny how we talk a little bit about these critically acclaimed movies that didn't get nominated, and you really can't tell until a few years down the line what is going to have a lasting legacy. I mean, honestly, if you look at the Best Picture nominees or the Best Picture winners for the past decade, how many of them are we still talking about? Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like Slumdog Millionaire and The Artist. Both are perfectly fine films, but we're talking more about The Dark Knight or Drive than we are talking about those movies, and those are films that didn't even get nominated for Best Picture. So it's funny, and Paddington 2 is such a wonderful film, and the first one I think I don't know what the marketing looks like over there overseas where you are, but over here they've kind of been advertising it as a really like slapsticky, goofy, lowest common denominator children's film. So I get why they haven't made a lot of money and why a lot of people have been like, really? Those movies are good? But like, I'm telling you, I remember when the first one, I saw previews for the first one and was like, wow, that looks like garbage. And then I saw the reviews and I was like, well, all right, I guess we should see it. And my wife and I, we're totally blown away. It was such a charm. Like, the charm is like pouring out of every like crevice of this film, and it's beautiful. It's so well shot, and it's so thoughtful, and it has this just fantastic element to it. It's very reminiscent of Wes Anderson if you kind of tone down the snarkiness a little bit. And that's not again, I love Wes Anderson, but like, it's a little bit more whimsical than him almost. And the same goes for Paddington too. It's a shame that because they're children's films, because they kind of have that kind of stigma about them, that they wouldn't get that kind of Oscar attention or that recognition, even though they are just as good, if not better, than any movie in those categories.
Yeah, like I think when I got to see the movie about 2 months before it came out in America, and I remembered seeing, and like I think Tristan talked about this famous nerd party group chat where it's like no one's allowed in but us, and it was like, guys, you've got to go see Paddington 2 when it comes out, because I watched and I was like, it was almost like someone went, let's make Grand Budapest Hotel but with a cuddly bear, and it just works so well. And it was one of the most kind of charming movies I saw last year. It was impossible not to kind of get a wee smile on my face, and I thought that would be hard to replicate after the success of the first one. But it's just, they're wonderful movies, and I can see them sort of, as you were saying, like we talk about certain movies from certain years, but you can imagine in 10 years time people sat like on kind of in the run up to Christmas, just cuddled up on the couch with their family. Oh, what's on Amazon Prime? Let's watch Paddington 2.
Yeah.
And just really enjoying it. I think it's going to really stand the test of time and be one of those family favorites.
I think so too, and I really hope they keep making them. If they can keep that same creative team involved, I'd love to have like a Paddington trilogy. Let's go ahead and put that on the list of the greatest trilogies of all time.
Oh yeah, and based on the money it made in the UK alone, I don't think that's ever going to be an issue. I mean, it only recently just finished its run at the cinema here. It outlasted the Last Jedi. It was, just one of these movies that just kept going and going at the box office. So I think it's definitely assured of probably a third one. The UK box office may have been a disappointment, but I think it's going to, the global market and the UK market's enough to keep it going, I think.
Right. So as far as the Oscar nominations, we've got a really strong lineup, and you've seen most of them.
Yeah, the only one I've not seen is The Shape of Water.
Okay.
I mean, I still kind of bring it up against my girlfriend. I was in America in early December, so I was able to catch a few of the Oscar-nominated movies or the buzzed movies, and The Shape of Water was getting an East Coast or sort of coastal elite preview when I was over there, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta go see this movie. And the first night we got into New York from Philadelphia, Shape of Water was getting shown with Del Toro and Doug Jones doing an introduction. I was like, oh my God. But we'd already agreed to catch up with my girlfriend's auntie and uncle that night, so there was no way I could get out of that meal. So thankfully the meal was pretty amazing, so it kind of made it a little bit better. But the amount of times I was like, you know what, maybe we could go to the Lincoln Center and maybe see Shape of Water tonight. She's like, nah, I don't want to go see that movie. I'm like, come on. And I tried, and the last day we were in New York, it was absolutely snowed under. We're heading for the flight, and I was like, I bet today I could have got away to see Shape of Water. You would have lied that. And she went, yeah, we probably would have gone on this snow day. And I was like, yep, typical. So Shape of Water, I'm only another just less than 2 weeks away now from seeing it.
That's so exciting.
I won't have much of an opinion on that one other than I'm desperate to see it, but I've seen the rest. So which one is it you've not seen?
The only one I haven't seen is Darkest Hour, and I totally did not realize that was nominated for Best Picture. I'll be honest. My wife went and saw it with her parents over Christmas, and they all really loved it. And I hear it makes a wonderful double feature with Dunkirk, which I adored, and because it's about Churchill and it's about that whole invasion. So you could probably cut those movies together and get an epic, really all sides of the argument, all points of view about that incident, and make a really wonderful film out of it. But that's the only one. I've seen everything else. I just saw Phantom Thread and The Post last weekend, and But Darkest Hour is the only one I haven't seen, and I do want to see it.
Perfect.
I don't know if I'll get around to seeing it before the Oscars, but that
I
is my
would
goal.
rush. Yeah. So what we can do, we can just dive in. So we're going in alphabetical order because that is the order that the Variety website has it in on my webpage. So we'll start with C for Call Me By Your Name.
That's right. If you're following along at home, go ahead and pull up the Variety list and you can play with us.
Absolutely. So, Shawn, when did you kind of see Call Me By Your Name? And because it seems to have had a bit of a weird rollout in America. So, kind of tell me about what your thoughts were going into this movie and then what you thought of it.
Yeah, it's funny how you were mentioning you guys don't get a lot of the movies until January, February. It's almost the same here, especially for these smaller Best Picture movies. What they do is they release them limited in like December or so, and then they kind of expand a bit as their reputations build, as the nominations start coming out. People want to see them, and demand goes up for screenings. So we typically see these movies as well at the same time you're seeing them. So I saw Call Me By Your Name just a couple weeks ago, and I'd heard a lot about it. I'd been reading about it, and it sounded really interesting. There's a lot of, there is kind of this stigma still that I hope, and I'm just as guilty of it as anybody, but there is kind of a stigma of like, oh, it's the gay film, it's the gay nominated film. Of course, they got to include one of those. Moonlight won last year. We have to hit our quota. So there's always that kind of stigma. So for my part, there's a fair amount of skepticism when I go into a movie like that or Moonlight, and I watch it. I'm like, okay, how much of this is the quality of the film? How much of it is like a social comment? And I went into it hoping to enjoy it, and it absolutely blew me away. It was kind of the same thing with Moonlight, where I went in hoping for a good film, and I came out with like a great film. And Call Me By Your Name I might even like a little bit more than Moonlight, and I absolutely adored Moonlight. But it caught me so off guard. It was such a beautiful love story, very intimate, very touching, and deeply moving. Beautiful music and beautiful cinematography and direction. Very very genuine. I just love any film where I can really tap into the emotions of the characters and really feel like that this is happening. And a lot of times when you have a film like there have been arguments made against it. It's like, oh, it's very pretentious, like rich white people living out their lives. But like, I mean, sure, you could argue that, but I really felt the emotion, and I don't remember the characters' names, unfortunately. But the young boy who feels his first true love, his first real love, just the gamut of emotions that he goes through. And Armie Hammer is amazing, and Timothy, I can't pronounce his last name. This is terrible. I feel like I'm letting him down.
You know what? The only thing is, I was prepared to say it, and he seems to be in everywhere. He's in Call Me By Your Name, Lady Bird, Hostiles, Timothy Chalamet,
Yes.
something like. Oh, I'm going to get it
Yes.
wrong, but I'm sure. I've seen the demographics of people that listen to this show, and we have more listeners in New Zealand than we do in France. So I'm not concerned about hate mail or about getting this wrong.
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely stunning, and I'm kind of shocked. His Best Actor nomination is absolutely deserved, but I hate how when you have movies with like that are about like a couple, you only nominate one of them. Like it happened with Blue Valentine. I feel like it happened with Before Midnight. Like you nominate like Julie Delpy, you nominate Michelle Williams, but what about Ryan Gosling? What about Ethan Hawke? And this year it's like, what about Armie Hammer? You can't have one part of that relationship without the other, and they feed each other, and their chemistry is so amazing. That's a snub. I really felt. I was like, oh, I wish they both got nominated. But Call Me By Your Name, that film has stuck with me. I've been listening to the soundtrack constantly. I want to read the book. What a incredible film. It really blew me away.
To kind of give you a bit of perspective of, like I was saying, like we get all these Oscar movies tend to be about January, February. They come in with all this hype. Something like Lady Bird will be out in a few weeks, which seems to have been out kind of everywhere else but here, so it's coming in with so much hype.
Yeah.
I actually saw Call Me By Your Name in the last week in October. It was the counter-programming film essentially to Thor. So I saw this like the day before Halloween Day, and it's so bizarre. Like I was kind of just looking back at there, going, was it kind of November time, something around that? And that's when it came out. Was the week of kind of Thor came out. So it was this weird counter programming movie which had no real hype other than a good word of mouth going into this film. Like, I've been reading articles where it's like the kind of Call Me By Your Name, they feel like the release schedule in America has really sort of undermined it, that you've got it came out so late. Like, when I was in America in December, like, there was just signs and posters up going coming soon. I was like, I saw this movie like a month and a half ago. Why is this sort of European, I suppose that kind of answers it in itself, that European movie only now finally coming to America? And then it was like, it's now showing in New York, and then it's still kind of seems to be that Call Me By Your Name, the Oscar nominated movie, getting a wider release now in America. And it's like, but this has been out for months and stuff. It's nearly been out for 4 months as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
so,
it's frustrating.
Like, I saw it, and I was immediately kind of blown away by the performances of, well, I'll just say Timothy and Arnie Hammer as Oliver. I mean, they're such a fantastic pairing, and it's not sort of it's not a overly dramatic way that sort of relationship unfolds, where you sort of expect like this young son and his parents to sort of maybe clash with the idea that he's this young gay boy, and it's like he's starting a relationship with someone that's a guest in their house, this older man. Whereas in reality, like, I think one of the best parts of the movie, and I actually think that's my snub, was Michael Stolberg as the professor.
Wait, he didn't get nominated?
I don't think so. Let me just consult Variety.
Yeah, consult it, because we're about to have a riot in here.
He did not. No, the supporting actor Willem Dafoe, Woody Harrelson, Richard Jenkins, Christopher Plummer, Sam Rockwell. I mean, it's hard to really argue with some of them.
I mean, yeah, Sam Rockwell's going to take it. He was fantastic.
Oh yeah. So like his like speech with his son at the end, where it's just like that was one of the best moments in a movie last year.
I couldn't agree more.
It was just. And like that's a moment in itself where it's just like, it's just pitch perfect. It's nailed. It's not the usual sort of, we were talking about, they've given it sort of, there's their token gay movie. Like, it went against what you would expect with the movie, where it's like a shock or a surprise. And I thought it was just a beautiful scene of understanding. And it was a pitch perfect moment.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm shocked that he didn't get nominated. That was like, you could feel it in the theater, that scene between him and his son, just the silence. That was like the clincher. It was that, and then you follow that up with the final shot of the film. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess kind of we're talking spoilers a little bit, but the final shot of the film, just the 1-2 punch, emotional gut punch, that's going to stick with me forever. I mean, I think this is, like we were saying, you don't really know the value of a film until a few years has passed, but like, this is one that it stuck with me, and I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm obsessed with it. I think it's one of the best picture nominations.
Yeah, I'd love to revisit it again. And kind of talking of the best, we now kind of dive into D for Darkest Hour, and this is obviously one you've not seen, so I will kind of avoid spoilers of the success of the Dunkirk Commission. But for me, I think if you ask most people that see this movie, it does not deserve to be in the top tier list. I mean, Gary Oldman is very good in this movie, like, make no mistake, but that's not enough. Like, I watched this movie and it's nice. Like, it's kind of, I suppose it's odd for me as sort of a Brit. Like, I view it in a kind of interesting way where I think of like, well, it's a movie sort of in this post-Brexit world or kind of Trump world, where we've got this leader that's flawed but kind of goes with what he thinks is the right thing, and history ends up proving him right. And, you know, we see it in Dunkirk, the success of that mission.
Right.
But, like, with this movie, it's the type of movie you'll watch in the cinema and think, I could easily have watched that on Netflix, like, or I could have watched it on like HBO. There's nothing really cinematic about it at all. Like, the performances is really good, but it's not a very theatrical movie. You know, there's some flourishes from Joe Wright, who I think
I was going to say, didn't he direct it? And how interesting that I haven't seen Atonement. I don't know if I've seen his film actually.
Atonement's brilliant.
Yeah, and
there's a missing frames for you right there.
Yeah, well, there it is. We got to make that happen. And but I know I'm aware of his capabilities as a director, and how his flourishes. Like I know there was a single shot in Atonement that people just went crazy about when I was in film school, and that was the whole thing. It's like, oh, if you can do a one-shot sequence, you're the best director ever. So everybody loved him and Alfonso Cuarón. But like, it's interesting that you say like Darkest Hour just feels very much like, oh, you could just catch it on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it is like, there's some moments where you think, oh, that's a little nice visual touch, but a lot of it is like people talking in rooms, and there's some like nice little visual flares where there's a point where like Churchill's in a car and it's just this one shot where it's just like going from left to right as you see sort of Britain kind of getting on during the wartime, and he's like, well, you know, you wouldn't think there was a war going on, and then there's a similar shot later in the movie where it's a bit more darker, but there's just some bits where it is like, and it's, I was having a chat with some friends that saw the movie, and we had the same reaction where we almost wanted to be sick at how sweetly awful it was. There's a scene, and I wouldn't class this as a spoiler, but you know, Churchill is torn. Should he follow through with what he wants to do and risk losing his premiership and potentially the war? And he decides to get out of his little taxi, and then he goes into the, you know, the underground, which he's never been on before, and he talks with these, you know, young children, this black janitor, and it's like, so what do you think I should do? Oh well, Mr. Churchill, you know, we're with you, Mr. Churchill. And it's just like, oh my god, it's like the type of Britain that people that are not British, right, where it's like, oh what, Mr. Churchill, oh we're all with you.
That sounds like a scene
to like,
it sounds like a scene that I would have expected to find in the Post. Like, it sounds like Spielberg's worst tendencies as a director. Like his, and I think Spielberg's brilliant, but he does have a tendency to go into the saccharine and a little sugary sweet with like, oh, we love you. I remember the opening of Lincoln. There was that speech. I think Dane DeHaan walks up to Lincoln and says, "Oh yes, I remember your speech," and he quotes it to him, and it's like, okay.
Oh, it's so bad, because like at one point he's like, he needs to rouse up the politicians. So after the speech he goes, well, I've chatted to Mr. James Duncan, who from Thing, and he says we should go do this. And it's like, oh my god. And it's just like, I was like, and you're watching it thinking, no, that never happened, surely. And it's like one of these big creative flourishes where it's like, no, I'm not having this. It's like there was always I can't remember the name of I think it was like the James Bonding podcast from the Nerdist, and they had this thing where it was like, in James Bond movies there's British people which seem to have this British off where it's like, oh, I'm very British, and oh, I'm very British because I own horses and stuff, and it's just like this Britain of a fantasy land where it's just, you're like,
wait, are you telling me that's not accurate?
No, like
everything I thought I knew about you was a lie. I don't know what to believe. I just don't know what to believe anymore.
Yeah, if you watch that, like, no one talks on the underground. It's just like, you could have President Trump or Theresa May, any world politician could sit on the train and everyone just be like playing on their phones, reading the paper, like, all right, yeah. And it's just like, it's terrible. It's one of these things you're like, oh god, no. And like the final speech is really good and Gary Oldman is brilliant, but like that doesn't make it a best picture nomination. Sure. It's definitely not Joe Wright's best movie. The thing like Atonement, I genuinely think is an incredible movie. Hannah is a underrated action movie. So yeah, Darkest Hour, I wouldn't rush to see it, but I'm very curious to hear your interpretation of this fantasy land where Britain apparently loves Europe and the people in the underground are all just so happy. It's definitely maybe one not to rush and see.
I mean, as long as it reinforces my imaginary Britain, because it sounds, you've just shattered it and everything in my life is ruined. But all right, well, let's move on to the other British movie about the same incident, which is actually titled Dunkirk.
Exactly.
How do you, Lee, how do you feel about the film Dunkirk?
Yeah, I obviously, you guys did a podcast on this, and I unfortunately had to miss out on this. I was stranded at an away day, as it were, at that time. So, yeah, I thought Dunkirk was excellent. I haven't had a chance to revisit it yet. I've got it on home video just nearby. But yeah, I saw it like 2-3 times at the cinema, and I think as an experience, it's unbelievable. It's one of these movies where, like you were kind of saying, it would make an interesting double bill. like probably in most filmmakers' hands, Dunkirk would have been a pretty much a normal narrative where it's like people are pushing those little things around on boards and maps and say, well, these people are here on this way or anything like that. But Nolan doesn't do that. And I love the idea that he had these 3 different timelines, all just with 1 week, 3 days, or 24 hours, things like that, and it trusts the audience to be intelligent to follow that. And I've never seen something like that done in a war movie before. It throws you in, because I never expected it to be that when I went in, and I was like, 1 week, what's this 1 week thing? And then you're like, oh yeah, I get that. And I just think as an experience, like, people get sometimes caught in the shrubs of this, where it's like, well, like, there's not enough people there for it to be 300,000 people on a beach, and it's like, who cares? Like, I genuinely imagine it's sort of similar to like probably Jarhead in a way, where it's like, this is probably a very close interpretation of what it's like to be at war, sort of the boredom, the stress, the anxiety, as opposed to the usual sort of flag waving. And I thought it was genuinely fantastic. Yeah, what about yourself?
Dunkirk, I mean, I've talked about Dunkirk ad nauseum. I can't say enough good things about it. It's my favorite film of 2017. I think it might be Nolan's best movie, and I'm not gonna, I know that's a big claim to make considering his filmography, but it is such a powerful visual cinematic statement, and it came out at the perfect time. He's doing all these interviews about how Netflix is just not the same as a theater going experience, and you're like, okay, come on, Christopher Nolan, we know you're a film snob and blah blah blah. And then I was lucky enough to catch the 70 millimeter IMAX screening of it.
I never saw it in 70mm IMAX, but
man, what an experience. I mean, it was like a $20 feature. I think it was like $22 to see it on the IMAX screen. I saw it by myself because my wife was out of town, and I just was like floored. And I told her when she got back from her trip, I was like, we are going to see it, and we're spending the extra money to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX, because that is how you see this movie. And I mean, it's one of the most powerful film-going experiences I've ever had. And I think Nolan, I've gone back because I got this movie on 4K, which is, I mean, I know the 4K format is still kind of building up. And yes, I do understand that it's kind of an excuse to make us buy all the same movies again. But if there's any movie that justifies the purchasing of 4K, it was Dunkirk, because I watched that, and man, am I happy with that purchase. It was just, watching it again, I was afraid I would lose that feel of the theatrical like you do lose that when you watch movies like that at home, but it still holds up for me. And there's so much about it where I've been watching Nolan's movies, and I went back and watched the Dark Knight trilogy, and I went back and watched Inception, and especially around Inception, from the Dark Knight to the Dark Knight Rises, his movies become a little bit more bloated, like they're longer, the running times, and Interstellar as well, they like get up to nearly 3 hours a couple times. There's a lot of clunky dialogue, and that these are movies that I enjoy, or some of them at least, but to see Dunkirk and to see how like it's almost a silent film, and to see him kind of so confidently delve into like a visual like cinematic experience like that was so impressive to me. I continue to be blown away by Dunkirk. I can't say enough good things about it. I feel like I'm just gushing, but I adore it. It's my pick. I know it won't win, but that's my favorite of the Best Picture bunch.
What I'd find would be quite fascinating would be like to see what the first draft of the screenplay was like, because as you say, it is like a silent movie, and I'd love to know just how like it's almost that kind of less is more aspect that I'd love to have seen what that first draft was, and then just like them going, no, that bit of dialogue removed there. Well, and just like really cutting it down to the bare bones and going, what are the characters feeling at this moment? Apparently
he wanted to shoot it without a script, and Emma Thomas, his I think she's his wife or his partner. She is. His producing partner, at least. She was like, just write a script. And it was like a 70-page script that was almost all description, but he was keen to do it without a script, which I think is hysterical. It kind of reminds me of George Miller shooting Mad Max Fury Road, how they came up with the visuals first and then they wrote a script later.
It was one of those things. I think it's going to be. I think so many actors. I think will kind of get a big boost from starring in this movie. And I think like you see someone like Tom Hardy. I thought was excellent in this. But I need to get the guy's name up here. But then also like Harry Styles, when he was cast, everyone was like, why is Harry Styles in this? Like, he's the guy from One Direction, and I thought he was excellent.
He's great, yeah.
And what you would cast as an against type for a boy band actor to be kind of this quite, not loathsome, but kind of.
But he is a little ruthless
at all costs.
Yeah, he's willing to throw other people under the bus to get out to survive, and it's disturbing and. Like you said, Nolan kind of plunges you into the depths of the war and doesn't shy away from every kind of emotion. And the brilliance of what he did with those 3 timelines is you get 3 varying perspectives on this war and this incident. So you get the heroism of the ordinary citizen. You get the not cowardice, but the just genuine fear and like drive for survival of the average everyday soldier, and then the bravery and the courage of the pilots who came in and just kind of rocked it. So it's just an incredible feat of filmmaking.
And I don't know if you've seen The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
No, God, I do need to see that, but I'm almost terrified. The lobster was so fascinating, but it was like a horrifying experience.
Here's some boring trivia for you. That hotel from The Lobster is a stone's throw away from the island where Luke Skywalker is based in The Last Jedi. So there's your Visit Ireland thing. But kind of the reason I highlighted Killing the Sacred Deer is it stars Barry Keoghan, who plays George. Wow, I want to come and help and do my bits.
Right.
And like he dies, and he's this, oh wow, what a lovely young boy, and he gets his name in the paper, and then in like Killing of the Sacred Deer, like a few months later, he is this like psychopathic, vindictive, whereas and eats spaghetti in the most horrific way. So it was it's fascinating to see like their careers, and I think it's Fiona Whitehead who played Tommy, and then I think Jack Loudon, who we actually had on the show at one point, as Collins. I think they're all going to kind of. This will have exploded their star name, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see where they are in a year's time, 2 years' time, once they start getting the hits from this movie. So, kind of going from sort of Dunkirk, which I don't think has one single person of colour, to Get Out. Obviously, this is a bit of a trek back in the timeline for everyone. What was your reaction to Get Out at the time, and did you ever think, wow, this could be a Best Picture nomination here?
I hoped it would have been, and I'm glad it is, because I remember when it came out and you were just seeing the insane critical reaction. And it sucks when a movie like this gets something like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, because then it almost creates a stigma about it. You're not looking at the film itself. I remember people were like, oh, it was good, but was it 100% on Rotten Tomatoes good? And I'm like, guys, you do realize it's just a good-bad ratio. It's not like the quality of the film is determined by the number of the tomato meter. And I feel like that worked against this movie in some people's perspectives, where they're like, oh, it's not that good. I saw Get Out the opening weekend, and I just loved it. It is such a fun, exciting thriller. It's hysterical. It's terrifying, and you really. I thought it was just pure entertainment. Great cinema, a really confident debut from Jordan Peele. Really, really spectacular, considering most of what he'd done was just like Jordan and Peele stuff. Wait, did I say Jordan and Peele? I meant Key and Peele. Yeah. Key and Peele. It was just like amazing to see him kind of take that leap into cinema and to come out with something that's so striking and so memorable. And man, I adore it. And it is, again, it's one of those movies where I'm excited it's nominated for Best Picture. I don't know if I'd call it the best movie of 2017 like a lot of people have, but
no.
I'll tell you what, it's definitely on my Halloween viewing list, my annual Halloween list moving forward. It's a wonderful film. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm trying not to let the overwhelming acclaim influence my opinion, because I do feel that's kind of worked against it in some ways, because you have to wonder, it's like, it is great, but is it that great? I don't know. What do you think? Where do you fall on that argument?
I think this is also we're talking like 11 months ago, I think this film came out here, and I watched it and I thought, yeah, that was a really good genre movie. I thought it was funny. I'm still got I work in a small office, it's open plan, and being the British people we are, one cliche is true, we do love like a cup of tea and coffee, and just see when I hear people spoon go around the rim of a cup, I'm always like, get out. That's what it always makes me think of now. I thought it was really good, whether it's like best picture worthy or it's like the top tier for the year. It is something I think is open to interpretation, but I think whether it's there by kind of being a bit of a representation movie or what it stands for, I'm going to be happy that any sort of genre movie makes it onto a list like this, that so often it's been sneered at or overlooked. And I think to get in, like, this movie does deserve the wide reception it's gotten. And I think when people say, oh, it's like the best movie of the year, I can see it being, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, it's probably the best movie of the year to people that maybe don't get to the cinema often and maybe go once every couple months, and they're seeing things like this, The Last Jedi, some Marvel movies, and a movie like this would stand out to them and probably think, wow, this is really good, And I think the fact that it's got that kind of popular appeal and then crossover appeal has been really nice. It feels like it's been a bit of a kind of juggernaut since February, that people saw it, oh, this is really good, and that word of mouth has continued to tick over. And the fact that it made it to, December, January nomination time and got onto that like top tier, I think really is a testament to that word of mouth and perseverance.
I think so too. And it's, even a nomination for Jordan Peele, it is amazing how the trajectory this movie has had. It's been in the conversation since February. That doesn't really happen at all. And I feel like a couple movies that have gotten snubbed lost out because of the fact that they came out earlier in the year and have been forgotten. But Get Out just powered through, and I think, like you said, I think it's deserving. I think if it won Best Picture, I'd be a little like, oh, come on, guys. But I'm happy it's in the conversation.
Absolutely, and it'll be interesting to see where it lands up. And I think it's going to be one of those movies that probably out of most of these movies, probably along with sort of Dunkirk, it'll be the one that'll probably persevere longest in sort of like mainstream watching, people buying it on Blu-ray, or as you say, watching it on a Halloween night. You get that 31 days of Halloween where people are watching a horror movie a night. I can see Get Out now being sort of established in that mold, and I think it's a great victory for movies of, fans of horror movies that have probably seen so often their movies overlooked or disregarded and sneered at, and that getting a bit of an establishment vote is maybe a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully it'll allow studios to go, you know what, this was a success, and it was, I think for 10 million or something like that. It didn't cost much to make.
Something like that, and it made what, 400 or 500 million?
Yeah,
something insane.
And I'd like to see people now go, you know what, I'll put a bit of money into something like that. More original content is always good. So whether this film we think is the best or it's a really good movie, I think hopefully what it allows studios to do will hopefully mean that its kind of legacy will be seen in many different ways.
Definitely.
So going from Get Out, where it's people of representation, now we go into sort of a tedious white privilege, as it were, perhaps, with Lady Bird. When did you sort of first see Lady Bird? This seems to be a movie that just seems to be getting, the hype is still building. Obviously, it's not out here yet in the UK. What was your take on Lady Bird when you saw it? Were you going in hyped up, or was it sort of let's see what this movie's about?
Yeah, I was excited. Before Paddington 2 came and rightfully swiped the honor of being the highest rated Rotten Tomatoes movie of all time, Lady Bird, I think, had just gotten that honor. And so there was a lot of hype. And again, same thing with Get Out. I was trying to really separate myself from that hype, and really I didn't want it to influence my opinion of the movie. I didn't want to go into it and be thinking the whole time, well, this isn't 100% good, it's maybe in a 70 or 80%. So I tried really, really, really hard to just go into it and experience as its own thing. And I've got to say, I really enjoyed Lady Bird. I thought it was very heartfelt. Like you said, it's very, very kind of white privilege in a way, but it's also the character herself doesn't come from a place of high privilege. She's kind of...
She comes from the wrong side of the tracks.
Exactly. Literally and figuratively, she is from the wrong side of the tracks. I haven't seen Greta Gerwig in anything, so I don't quite know. Yeah, I know. I haven't seen Frances Ha. I haven't seen... I haven't seen most of Noah Baumbach's stuff, and I always tote that I'm a huge fan of his, even though I've only seen Squid and the Whale and Meyerowitz stories. But I thought, this, again, just like Jordan Peele, this is a very confident feature debut for her. And again, it's great to see her kind of pioneering the way for female representation in this genre, or not genre, but in this category. And again, it kind of the same way with Get Out. I wonder if, like, is it really deserving of Best Picture? I don't know, but I know I really enjoyed it, and I thought the performances were strong. It was quirky, but it wasn't annoying. I get really annoyed. I'm very, like, sensitive to quirk when it gets obnoxious, and this movie didn't really bother me. I thought it walked a very fine line between annoying and sincere, and I really admired it. I thought it was a very, very excellent debut feature for her. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I went into this movie sort of quite early doors. I knew this was a sort of movie that was kind of going to be aimed at me, whereas, like, I'm a huge Greta Gerwig fan. Like, when I saw Frances Ha, it just triggered something in me, and it's probably one of my favourite movies of the past kind of 5-6 years. I love it, and I think Greta Gerwig as a writer, when she works with Noah Baumbach, I think they bring out the best in each other in a way. Movies that he's done, like Meyerowitz Stories, I thought was good. I haven't revisited it. Whereas I think when Gerwig and him have written together on Frances Ha, Mistress America, which is one I think you would really enjoy, okay. I thought they complement each other really well. And the idea of Greta Gerwig going on to write and direct her own movie was something that was like, yeah, count me in. And obviously it comes out here in 2 weeks, but it was out in America when I got there. It had just come out the week earlier, and I didn't know how big or popular this movie was going to be, so it was like, could it be a gone there in the cinemas 1 week, gone the next? And so I was a bit worried about that. And within 48 hours of landing in America on the Friday, I was seeing it Sunday afternoon with Mike Schindler from Great Shot Kid and many other podcasts. So we went along to see it, my girlfriend Mike, and I was just so excited going into that movie, and I thought it really delivered. For me, I love movies about, kind of joked about it being a movie about white privilege, but I really like movies like this where it's about like characters in that sort of middle class world that they're just slightly aloof, and like we're quite aware that like their problems are quite sort of insignificant, but for them they're the biggest things. And I just thought it was just such an exciting movie. I thought it was very funny. There was so many little standout moments, and I'm desperate to see it again when it comes out in the cinema here. Yeah. And I thought Saoirse Ronan was so good as Lady Bird. She was like the type of person where I was watching it and I had this sort of reaction where I came out afterwards, and we said our goodbyes to Mike, and me and my girlfriend went to the bar in the cinema, and we were kind of chatting about the movie, and I was like to her, I was like, well, for you as a teenage girl, like I can relate to aspects of the movie. What's your thoughts as having been a teenage girl yourself? How relatable was it? Obviously, we grew up in Britain and not necessarily Sacramento, California, but it was quite relatable, and it had me thinking quite a lot about this trend in sort of movies and culture now, where the early 2000s, where the music we liked, what it was like to be in sort of that time, is now being represented in cinema, that the teenagers of those days are now the filmmakers of today. Or like around the time I saw Lady Bird, I just recently bought tickets to go to a couple concerts where it was like the 15th anniversary of this album, where this band's going to tour this album and play it from first track to last track, and it was like, well, this was the album I was listening to in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
so
it's weird to
going along. Yeah,
I was gonna say, it's weird to be like watching coming of age movies that are your decade. Like, I'm so used to watching movies like we did Stand By Me on Missing Frames. Tristan had never seen it before, so we watched that, and it's one of my favorites. But that's like the 50s, the 60s. You have a nostalgia for that era, and I find myself being very nostalgic for I grew up, I was in high school in the early 2000s, and to see it represented. And it's interesting because it's that time right when the internet was starting to become what it is today, but it's right before social media. So it's between everyone starting to connect to each other in very like new ways. It's bringing people together, but it's right before it almost became troubling. And people became like, just staring at their phones all the time and texting and Facebooking, all that stuff. So it's almost like that you're right on the edge of a certain kind of loss of innocence type deal. And I feel like Lady Bird, there's a moment where the girl that Lady Bird is trying to impress like has her phone out and is just kind of texting away, and Lady Bird doesn't have a cell phone, so you kind of sense without them needing to hit the nail on the head, they are kind of implicating like this is the way of the future. We're moving in this direction where communication is not going to be face to face. It's going to be through phones and screens and things like that.
Yeah. Because I had the same, like, I remember thinking, like, mobile phones were becoming a thing that early 2000s sort of period, and I was like, I don't need one. And it was like my last year at high school, like, I think I got a hand-me-down from my dad, and it was like, yeah, it's all right, I guess I'll take it. And it was like, it was never a kind of a big deal, and it was like, if you wanted to impress someone, it was like, hey, look, I'm reading this book, sort of similar to Timothy Chalamet's, like, character, where he's just reading that book, that's his way of showing off. Whereas now it's like, well, look, I'm putting this up on Twitter that I'm watching this or reading that.
Yeah, here's my Instagram meal. Here's what I'm eating for dinner today.
And I think like Lady Bird is like the kind of the cusp of a few of these movies. Like, it's almost weird to think, well, our generation now can be defined by this type of music, by it's not just like this whole sort of thing is like, oh, it was sort of 9/11, 2001, the War on Terror. Like people were still kicking around like us, like just going around our daily lives of, we had all these things going on in the background, but in reality, life kind of went on, and it's going to be interesting over the next few years as people of that generation continue to make movies and articulate that time, as opposed to, like it's the 90s or it's, the 70s, the 80s. It's now, it'll be interesting to see what the Stranger Things will be of the early 2000s. And I think Lady Bird is definitely the first of a few movies we'll see kind of exploring our generation.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more about that. I'm excited. It's so exciting to see that happen and to think about these filmmakers growing up and doing that kind of stuff. So I completely agree.
So now we kind of go into what we kind of sort of thought got us really started talking, putting together this episode is Phantom Thread. So I'm kind of curious, like I only saw it for the first time the other day, and I kind of said, this was my sort of initial reaction in like a few sentences. What was your thoughts? And I'm going to ask you this as a sort of a two-part question. What was your expectations going into Phantom Thread, after Phantom Thread, and then in the sort of week or so after the Phantom Thread?
Sure. So I'm a big Paul Thomas Anderson fan. It's been a while. I need to go back through his movies. It's been a while since I watched them. In college I was going through his filmography like almost on the regular, and I saw Boogie Nights and Magnolia and Punch Drunk Love. There Will Be Blood came out during my first year at film school, so it was just like, oh, this is perfect, and I loved that. And it was. I've always been a fan of his, and I wish I was a film of his. That would be amazing. Paul Thomas Anderson, if you want to make a movie about me, you know how to reach me on Twitter at @YayShondorman. But
you should have tweeted that when he was doing his AMA on Twitter.
I know I should. Man, that was a missed opportunity. But I really love him. And what I love about him as well, just as a person, is, you bring up that Reddit AMA. I love how not pretentious he is. I think he was, when he was younger, he was a little like, oh, I'm a serious filmmaker and I have to make these very serious
those interviews
films.
To watch are terrible, aren't they?
And I
don't know if you've watched any of them lately.
Oh no, I should. But I feel like even he is like, he winces when he thinks of like, oh no, you're not talking about that interview, are you? Because the way he talks about himself in the past, he's like, yeah. And he seems so chill now. And I remember people were like trying to get him to talk trash on Marvel and Star Wars. And they're like, oh, how do you feel about these big budget films taking over? And he's like, I love them. I think they're great. I genuinely am so excited for The Last Jedi. I love the Marvel movies. And they're like, oh, okay. It's so funny that he's kind of gotten over himself a little bit, and his films still kind of have this aura of snobbery about them. But I think he's one of the great filmmakers. I didn't love Inherent Vice. That was maybe the only one of his movies I didn't really like. I thought The Master was fantastic. And bringing us to Phantom Thread, that kind of builds us up to that screening. I was hoping for something that would kind of win me back over after Inherent Vice, which I thought was interesting, but didn't really hold my attention. And Phantom Thread was kind of the same thing for me. It was my biggest thing about it was I thought it was well made. I thought the performances were great. It was just very hard for me to engage with the central relationship, and I felt that there wasn't really a on both their parts, I didn't understand. I understood the initial attraction, but very early on, it's kind of established that Daniel Day-Lewis's character is a little unhinged, and yet she kind of is just like, oh, whatever. But even though she expresses that she's uncomfortable, she still just kind of goes along with it. So I was like, okay, they're in a relationship, and neither of them seem that happy, but they continue to go along with it and kind of force themselves through it. And it became kind of cyclical to me. It felt like they were just kind of going through the same motions throughout the whole movie, which is a little over 2 hours. So by the end of it, I don't want to say I was bored, but I was kind of like, all right, I've gotten the point, and I just am not engaged with this story and this movie. And it kind of walked out of it as like, all right, that was fine, but didn't really capture my attention. Now, I know you were so excited. You were like going to screenings for Paul Thomas Anderson. You were going to marathons, building and building and building anticipation. So how did you feel about it?
Yeah, like I suppose it's been difficult. I've got still one more, like there's a bizarre thing or a wonderful thing going on in the UK just now where it's called the Paul Thomas Anderson Tour, where 5 35mm prints are just like being couriered between different cities like Edinburgh, Glasgow, London, Manchester over the past few weeks, where it's like Inherent Vice playing one day here and then it's being couriered elsewhere, and then Magnolia here and back and forth. So kind of I've watched 4 of his movies in 35mm in the past 2 weeks, and it kind of wraps up on Tuesday just coming with Punch Drunk Love, so the day before this drops. So I watched Inherent Vice in 35mm, then it was into Magnolia, then Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood the night before I saw Phantom Thread. So I was so hyped up for this. I was really curious to see, Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson kind of reunited again, and the idea of Paul Thomas Anderson shooting in Britain had me quite interested. I'm actually off to London on Friday for a long weekend, and the Woodcock residence is only like 5 minutes from the hotel I'll be staying in, so that'll be quite surreal. Like, I've realised I passed it so many times, so I'm very interested to make that walk again.
That's so
but
cool.
For me, the more I've thought about it, the more I like a lot of the themes. But like Inherent Vice was another movie that didn't really click with me the first time, and then when I rewatched it the other day, if I accepted the whole plot was just meant to be nonsense and just sort of enjoy the performances, it worked for me. But with Phantom Thread was like, I love Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, some of his films I consider masterpieces, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah.
And I love seeing, kind of, obviously There Will Be Blood's the outliner there, but I love seeing Paul Thomas Anderson do these epic stories with all these different storylines running parallel, mixing and crossing. And I kind of miss seeing Paul Thomas Anderson in modern day California, America, doing these sprawling stories. And with Phantom Thread, like, I was reading that it was like his second biggest budget movie after, I think it was in Magnolia. I think this movie cost $35 million to make, and I felt like all that money was really on the costumes. It was quite a claustrophobic movie in a way, whether by design, and it was all within this house. And I was watching it and I was like, yeah, like, I admire this, and it was almost like I was looking at one of his dresses, but I just didn't. I wanted to love it, and I'm going to see it again, in a few days' time, and I've got a ticket when it gets, like, there's a 70mm print in the UK, and it's going to work its way north, so I'll see it in, like, early March in that format, so I'll kind of see it probably the 3 times. But, like, it was one of those movies I just wanted to love more. When you go into that movie, you're so hyped up, and you watch it, and like, yeah, I admire it, but, like, it's not
tough
to sound kind of... Yeah, like, I don't want to sound like brass, but, like, obviously Woodcock, he's a very asexual character, and I feel that movie is sort of like a bit of a Woodcock in a way as well. Like, it's just not got that, like, blood running through this movie where there's so many things to admire, great performances, some interesting themes and approaches, and I don't think it's the best movie about a male being forced to eat poisoned mushrooms. I think The Beguiled probably is the better of the 2 movies, but it was one of these movies I wanted to like it more, and it's like when it's a filmmaker you love, you're like, well, maybe it's just me, maybe I'll just need to go see it a few more times, especially with so much great critical praise. I do feel I need to go see it again, but I'm missing Paul Thomas Anderson of the, maybe that cocky Paul Thomas Anderson that I've been watching some of his interviews after I've been watching his movies in 35mm, and this cocky guy in his late 20s, he earned the right to be as cocky as he was, but I do miss him.
Yeah, and it's hard when you are so pumped up for a movie and you love the filmmaker. It's almost like you have an obligation to like it before you even see it, and it's almost the worst expectation, even worse than the tomato meter, like having 100%. If you love a filmmaker and you're building yourself up and you're marathoning a series of his movies or whatever, to go into a movie and to come out and feeling like, oh, and it's like you wanted to like it. You didn't go into that thinking like, oh, I can't wait to bash this movie and to complain about it, and it better live up to, you go in with optimism and hope. So it's almost, you feel worse in a way. It's like you're letting a friend down. Like you want to be on their side, but you're like, you just missed it. But I feel very much the same way as you do about that one.
Exactly, and it'll be interesting to see. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Ross. Like, I came out of the Phantom Thread just as he was going in to see a movie, and he was like, "So, what did you think?" And I was like, "I admire it, but maybe I was a bit too hyped up." And he's like, "I had the same feeling going into The Master, and that, like, before There Will Be Blood." I was either too young to get into those movies, or I never had the chance to see, say, Punch Drunk Love in the cinema, those early 2000 movies. So I kind of like There Will Be Blood I've seen on the big screen, and then the other two after, you're going in hyped, and it's like, well, I like The Master, but it's maybe just missing that little something. And then with Inherent Vice, I just thought it was a bit messy, and with this, it's like, I just want to maybe get back to why I fell in love with Paul Thomas Anderson, but maybe he's evolved beyond that, and that's fine, but it doesn't mean I don't miss it.
It's true. Yeah. You can always love him, but, if you love something, you've got to let it go, Lee. You've got to let it go.
Absolutely. So going from Phantom Thread, we now go into one of the other kind of big P movies of the year, Post -the. What was your thoughts on Post by Steven Spielberg?
So I saw Phantom Thread and The Post in the same weekend, and The Post I really enjoyed. I thought it was a solid movie. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, man, Spielberg just knows how to tell a story. This guy is just, it's always a joy to, he's been doing a lot of like biopics and true stories and historical movies as of late. I guess it's kind of his thing. And, he did the BFG, and he's doing Ready Player One. So kind of throwing some fantastical and sci-fi in there, but it feels like, Bridge of Spies, Lincoln, and then The Post, they all kind of fall into the same feel for me. And The Post was maybe my least favorite of those three, Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, and this movie, but I really enjoyed it. Great, strong performances, just great storytelling, a really involving story. It didn't necessarily leap out to me as like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen, but I really, really enjoyed it and was thoroughly engaged throughout. It was kind of the opposite experience I had watching Phantom Thread, where I was definitely more engaged with the story and these performances. I thought Tom Hanks was great. I loved Meryl Streep. I loved her character. I thought, what a great story of empowerment, and what a great performance from her. Her arc is just so wonderful. And I remember you mentioning in the Nerd Party chat that there was a moment where people kind of got up and cheered. I'm wondering what moment that was for you. Our theater, there were a couple moments where you could kind of sense that people wanted to cheer, but it was an early morning screening, so we were all kind of groggy. But I have a feeling what it might have been.
Yeah, it was like, people don't really cheer or kind of applause here in UK movies. Actually, even that's sort of telling a lie. There Will Be Blood had a random applause at the end, the screening the other day. But it was more sort of that feeling at the end where, like, you can feel like the crowd's just like, yeah, like they're really sort of that pumped up, like, when you go see a film and like you can just sort of tell that reaction at the end, where I remember going to see We Need to Talk About Kevin, and the audience was just sat in stony silence at the end as the credits roll. No one was like rushing to put on their coat or I need to go now. It was just that silence. You could tell it had that profound effect. Or at the end of Spotlight, after you've seen this list of like places where abuse has taken place, everyone's kind of shell shocked. You just sort of feel that energy in the screen where people were like, I think people are, kind of like, yeah, let's go get these people. We obviously the film's got its kind of connections with Trump and such like. Whereas like this film here, you can always see that parallel between what's kind of going on here in this country. Like we want the press to be accountable and holding these people to the flame, as it were. So like there was that vibe, and I mean I'm slightly biased in this that I love a newsroom movie. So I thought I was really gripped by it, and I thought the performances were so good. David Cross, Bob Odenkirk.
That was great to see them together again.
Because I remembered I didn't know that that David Cross was in this. Like I'm trying to avoid as much about movies as going in as possible, and I didn't know he was going to be in it. But I was listening to Great Shot Kid, and I think it was Mike mentioned, he goes, "Oh, and David Cross had his hair on," and I was like, "Oh, this kind of reminds me of when Tobias had that really horrible stitched in hair." And I was like, it took me a few minutes to get over that when watching the movie,
right?
But, yeah, I thought it was really good, and I thought little things that I liked the sense of urgency through the movie, as it was kind of pushing, and like the soundtrack, just that kind of the use of it, things as it was just clicking away, and like even though the papers are going to be released, you're gripped by it. It's just people in a room, sort of similar to Dunkirk, where it's like it's people in the rooms, and it may not be the most theatrical thing in the world, but it can be really gripping when you've got all these great actors together competing and arguing, and it's just like you as the audience member are like, come on, do the right thing, come on.
Yeah.
And as you've got lawyers like, so where's your source from, and you're like, no, come on. And it's like almost like a sports match. You have these two sides, and you're rooting for your team to win, because you're like, come on, we're the good guys. Those guys are the Washington Patriots or whatever, the team that everyone hates. And this is Shawn that has assured me of this. So it's like you're cheering on your team, and when it kind of, you see them at the end release the paper, you're like, yeah, it's like my team scored a goal. And I really liked that aspect of the post, and I thought what it says about the world we're living in and what we expect and demand from the press, I thought was fantastic. And I'd love to, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love those allusions and that kind of metaphor for this day and age. And they didn't even have to really push that at all. That's what was so funny about it. It felt so much like I remember watching Detroit, which is a movie that came out last year that has kind of fallen completely off.
Yeah, that was quite surprising.
Yeah, it was. And that was another movie where you watched it and you were like, oh, man, I feel like the worst thing about this movie is the fact that I don't feel like I'm watching a period piece. I feel like I'm watching something unfolding on television in this day and age. And it's the same thing with The Post, except more uplifting, because you have a victory, a triumph of, the power of the press, the power of the people over the forces of evil in the government. But they didn't even have to really, again, they didn't have to hit you over the head with it. It was just very straightforward, and you were like, yep, I see where you're going with this. And I also loved that it's basically a prequel to All the President's Men, with that kind of teaser ending in Watergate.
I genuinely, I thought, see, through the whole movie, I had it in my head, like, I had this joke in my head, like, I love that the post-credits sequence is them, like, recruiting, oh my god, their names escaped me, but
Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, like recruiting them at the end, sort of like an Avengers style thing. And I just thought, oh yeah, like that would be so funny if that happened. Like, and then I was watching the movie, I was like, oh no way. And I just thought it was like, and it almost did feel like a sort of other movie, just this like tacked on bit. And I thought, you know what? I love that. Brilliant. I love it. Go for it.
Yeah, let's get All the President's Men cinematic universe fired up and going.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would pay to see like an All the President's Men or something, or a Deep Throat movie now in sort of this cinematic universe. I genuinely loved when that happened. It's rare that a thing like that surprises me, that I thought was a joke in my head, to actually see it on the screen and not think, oh, that's a terrible idea. I genuinely thought, wow.
Yeah, that's great. So moving on, this is one that you haven't seen. This is the one that you haven't seen on the list.
I'm still waiting. Not long to go.
So Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro's latest. And by the way, Guillermo del Toro just won Best Director at the Directors Guild Awards, which basically puts him at the forefront to win Best Director at the Oscars, which I couldn't be happier. I've been a huge Guillermo del Toro fan since I saw Blade 2. That was the first Del Toro movie I saw.
Wow. I snuck in to see that movie on my 16th birthday.
Yeah,
we had a bunch of friends that were like, right, we're going to go see a film on my birthday. I was like, I want to see Blade 2, but we were all 16. We couldn't get the tickets. So we got like tickets to some sort of, I think it was like Ali G in the house or something. And then it was like, right, the woman's turned her back. Let's go, go, go. And a few of us ran off, went into the screen, hearts racing, and sitting watching Blade 2. And I was so happy. I've been a fan since that moment, nearly like 14 years ago.
Yeah, I for some reason I was obsessed with Blade. I'd never seen them. I do this thing where I get obsessed with things before I see them, and it was the same with X-Files. I wasn't allowed to watch that as a kid, and I became really obsessed with it for some reason. And the same thing happened with Blade in high school. And a friend of mine, I kept telling her, I was like, man, I want to see Blade 2. And I hadn't seen the first one. I don't know why I was so fixated on the second one. I guess it was because it had just come out. And she was like, well, I'll get it for you for your birthday. And weeks went by, and she's like, I swear I got it for you. I just don't have it. I got it on DVD. I keep forgetting to bring it. And she was a sweet girl, and I was like, it's okay if you didn't get it. I know you're just trying to be nice. And then one day she actually brought it in, and she's like, see, I got it for you. So I thought that was really sweet of her, and I got to watch Blade 2, and that just created my love of Del Toro. I went and saw Hellboy the following, I think, a couple years later, and that kind of cemented my love for him. And then he followed that up with Pan's Labyrinth, which was like, oh wow, this guy's amazing. And I went back and watched Devil's Backbone and Kronos, and I realized, I was like, this guy's got like some real directing chops. Like, it's not just about like fantasy and fun comic book action movies. He's got like some real sensibilities as a director, some real, like, he's a beautiful storyteller. And Shape of Water feels like a culmination of a lot of what makes Guillermo del Toro great. You've got familiar elements, familiar stories, but being put through that Del Toro filter with his beautiful way of seeing things and his amazing visuals, his incredible production design and creature design, and just being able to get these amazing performances from people, very thoughtful, very heartfelt, and very moving. Now, it's not my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie. I don't even know if I would call it the best picture, even though I think it's going to win best picture. But I am so happy for him that I'm just like, let's do it. Let's get him his director Oscar. Let's get the three amigos. You got Iñárritu, Cuarón, and del Toro. Let's get them all their Oscars. So I'm more excited for him than I am for the movie. But that being said, I thought it was a beautiful film. I don't want to go into spoilers because you haven't seen it. I'm excited to see what you think when you finally get a chance to see it. Yeah,
definitely. I'm so excited to see this. Like, I haven't seen Crimson Peak, but like, I feel like this will be my favorite of his probably since like Hellboy 2. Like, I didn't enjoy Pacific Rim really at all. It was a film I just didn't get the hype for. But yeah, like Pan's Labyrinth, like Hellboy 2, Blade 2, Devil's Backbone, you know, those sort of movies I genuinely thought were fantastic. So like this movie, the fact that like when it was getting kind of previewed in December and like hearing the buzz, it was like, oh, it's Del Toro movie is really good. And it's like, well, of course it is. And just the fact that like, it's now been getting these endorsements, you know, there's nominations, you're like, wow, that's great to hear. Like, that's, you know, he's almost like, you know, when you're invested in a filmmaker like we are, when you get things like this, it must be what it's like for people with like things like Get Out. You're like, brilliant. Like, you know, we've been telling you for years, this guy's brilliant, and now you're acknowledging and seeing it. So I'm really happy that like it's being the success it is, and I really hope that I'm trying to keep calm going into this one. So I see where it happens.
I hope we don't have a repeat of Phantom Thread. I don't think we will. I think you're gonna really enjoy this. Well, just to follow up, I agree. It's like watching a friend of yours succeeding, and you've been rooting for him for so long. And I think it's long overdue for him. So it's good to see it also, like, because his movies don't make a lot of money, and he's not necessarily some of his movies have even lost money. Like Crimson Peak didn't do that great. The Hellboy movies were okay theatrically and really got a boost from video sales. But to see Shape of Water, this kind of underdog movie, kind of get a decent box office response, and then to see it build and build as it's gotten more awards attention, that's what makes me happiest. I want him to succeed. I want him to continue to make the movies that he wants to make, because I think he's one of our great filmmakers.
Absolutely. So now we're into our last movie of the bunch, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which does seem to split opinions. So what kind of, where do you kind of land on what side of the aisle do you land on this one?
Well, you know, it's funny. I went into Three Billboards because you had seen it and you had kind of expressed your opinion. You were like, you know, it just didn't do it for me. And you and I typically line up as far as our opinions go. Mm-hmm. They tend to align. So I went into it kind of expecting like, oh, I'll probably think this is okay. But I actually ended up really enjoying it. It was funny coming out of it and seeing all the controversy tied up in like the race issues and all the stuff talked about in the film. And it's kind of a very frank portrayal of Southern America. So some people, I guess, were offended by that. But I didn't really get that watching it because it felt very real. It felt like a very honest portrayal of that kind of that kind of country and that kind of town where this is how these people talk, this is what they believe, this is how they perceive things. But I thought it was really great, strong performances, really moving, very affecting. I was very involved with the story. I kind of get your complaint about like it felt kind of meandering, like the plot lines didn't really coalesce, and it kind of went on a little bit in a bunch of different directions, but it worked for me because I felt that it felt like an ensemble piece, and I really connected. I thought all the characters were really well developed, and I love Sam Rockwell, so I'm happy that he has kind of been wiping the floor, getting all those awards. So he's I'm mostly happy for him. I think Frances McDormand was really great in the movie as well, and I mean all the performances were great. But I really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite. I think this could be set to upset and take the best picture, and that I don't know how I feel about that. I would rather see it go to like The Shape of Water or Dunkirk or Get Out or even Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
But I thought it was good. It's not my favorite, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, like this was one I got caught in America, and my girlfriend's in the other room, and I've tried to get her on to even just say a few words about this movie because she genuinely loved it and feels the need anytime one of her friends goes to see it and says they love it to shove it in my face like, oh look, this is another person that loves it. It's like, I think it's a good movie. Like I thought it was really good, but I think there's some problems with it. Like I went to see it kind of like the hype really was that this was just like a really good trailer, and like for me I've really enjoyed some of like Martin McDonagh's movies, like In Bruges I think is amazing. It's great. One of the funniest comedies, and he's one of those directors that kind of I'm happy I will see anything he makes. And I thought it's kind of previous to Seven Psychopaths and I can't remember the name of the one where it was like Alexander Skarsgård. It was like a bad cop or something like that. I thought that was okay enough as well. So I was kind of going into this movie that I'm the same as you. I love Sam Rockwell, Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson. So I was really curious going into this one, and I think there's the thing that my real issue with this is like there's things in this movie that I love, like Sam Rockwell, Woody Harrelson, the performances, the humor, the comedy, the darkness of it all. I think I love things like that. I think there's just things where I just think it's what stops it being great is I think some of the things just like you get these plots which are all kind of just some of them kind of dip in and out, and I don't think some of these ideas all just stitch in well together. And I like, some people have said, the redemption arc's a bit rushed. I don't know. It's whether you think as an audience that this person is redeemed. I think everyone's made parallels. Well, this is sort of like a Trump country thing, and at the end of the day, the lesson could be, well, is he necessarily redeemed that this person has done genuinely horrific things? He's committed, battered black people in prison, but still at the end of the day, we can't appease people like this, but we kind of still have to live in the world with some of these people that sometimes justice it doesn't happen the way we want it to, that these people are sometimes part of it. Now we may want to run these people out, but these people exist, these people are real, and Sam Rockwell does a great performance of someone that is probably very relatable to people out there in the the world, and I thought I was fine with that. I didn't consider it a redemption arc. It was just someone that was very messed up thanks to his kind of maybe surroundings and his family, but it was just like I just didn't think some of it all came together too well, and it's still a good movie, but whether it was a great movie or not, I'm not so sure. So it's worth, I think it's good, but it's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure.
I think it will be one of these movies that will continue to kind of be a cult hit. I think it will be a hit on Netflix and all these different things, and I think people will get this on bargain DVD and so on. So yeah, not for me, but that's okay.
Yeah, and so we've gone through all the movies. What do you think as far as what do you think will win Best Picture, and what was your personal pick for Best Picture of the bunch?
I don't know what will win. I think it's quite an open one. I wouldn't be surprised if Dunkirk wins it. I don't know. We'll see if this is Nolan's one. You know, it tends to be when you get these Oscar movies, it seems to be an amalgamation of like, well, you know, we really like this director. We've kind of overlooked this person for a few years. I think I think Dunkirk could get it, but I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, maybe something like Call Me By Your Name wins, or you know, Shape of Water seems to be getting a good buzz, but whether that might just be reduced to like Best Director nods and everything, I'm not too sure. So we'll find out in a few weeks. What about yourself, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, I love Dunkirk. That's my movie of the year. I want that to win so bad. I'd be thrilled if it won. I think it's going to go to Shape of Water, but I would rather Del Toro win Best Director and something else win Best Picture than the opposite. Like if Shape of Water won and Del Toro didn't get Best Director, I'd be a little bummed. Unless it went to Nolan, then I'd be happy. But I mean, we've gone through all of them. I think if anything, we've just reconfirmed that this is a pretty strong year. A couple movies aside, we've got one of the Best Picture rosters in a while. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm really happy with like the quality. Like there's always like, well, it should maybe be this movie or this movie, and yeah, there's definitely like there's only maybe a couple I would have removed from that list and put in something else. But I think we've got a good list, and I think it's great to see so many young, you know, first time directors, you know, first time nominees, and you know, Willem Dafoe, and you know, all these different things where these people have been nominated. I think it's going to be very interesting come the end of February, and we'll see, you know, maybe even a few years time which one of these movies match up as the surprise contenders.
Absolutely.
So, Shawn, if people were, you know, we're talking about movies here that, you know, we're all seeing for the first time, you know, if you want to give your show a wee plug, you know, it's one of my favourite podcasts to listen to on a Sunday when I'm going out for a run. So, can I tell people where they can, you know, check out your show and reach out to you yourself if they want to fanboy over Paddington 2?
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Lee. I appreciate it. So my show is Missing Frames. It comes out every other Sunday. We watch movies that we should have seen by this point in our lives. We just did Dirty Harry. We've got another great episode coming up with Darren Moser, another Nerd Party member, for the Abyss, which I've never seen. And it's just a lot of fun, and you can check that out at thenerdparty.com/missingframes. It's on iTunes, it's on Blog Talk Radio, it's on Stitcher. Check that out, and you can find me on Twitter at YayShawnDoorman, and I would encourage people to like the Nerd Party on Facebook, and also follow us at Join Nerd Party on Twitter. And Lee, where can people find you? I mean, you're all over the Nerd Party. This podcast is fantastic. I'm always happy to be on it. But if I wanted to reach out to you and talk to you outside of the podcast realm, how would I do so?
Yeah, the joy of having a guest that's actually part of the Nerd Party means that you've done all the plugging that I usually do at the end and have to end up forgetting half of, so I thank you for that. Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Oscar-nominated movies and Paddington 2. And yeah, I'm really grateful for you coming on, Shawn. We've got a bit of an exciting project starting next month on Filibuster, so I have a feeling you're going to be a bit of a more regular voice on this podcast, so I'm excited. For that.
Yeah, it's going to be
but
great.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And yeah, as Shawn says, check out all those links and subscribe and like, and you know the deal. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.